Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be painting some of the Morannon Orcs from the Battle of Pelennor Field starter box for the Lord of the Rings game. So as you see, the models are started off just all over black primer. I've also got some dirt and sand on the base, and we'll be going over that as well. But our first step is just to cover up the metal parts of the model. And I use Vallejo metal color Gunmetal Grey. It's still bright, but it has that gray muted kind of look to it. And since that's kind of how orcs are, that's what we did. I also, because I had about 30 of these to paint, I just airbrushed after priming, just went over with the silver paint and airbrushed the whole thing, because the whole model is going to get paint covered over it. So it was pretty, a big time saver just being able to have all those models and then just blast it with the silver through the airbrush, because you don't have to be particularly careful, with the airbrushing, because everything is, again, going to get covered with an opaque paint at least once. But you can do it with a brush, and that's what I did with this. Actually, I think I painted 3 or 4 of them in this batch, all with the brush. So if you don't have an airbrush yet, or you don't have a space to use one, a hand brush will work just fine. So we just have like the leg guards, the kind of thigh plating, and the orcs, the different models, different sculptures have different areas, but again, don't worry if you miss something. So after you have that all covered and dry, I went over the entire model, all the metal parts, with the Citadel shade, Aggaross Earth shade. So this is like a brown red type shade. This will knock a lot of the shine off of metallics. It'll give it that dirt, maybe a little bit of a rust kind of look, but definitely not that shining armor type thing, type look. So just kind of go over this. Like each of these steps take like about 1 minute. So kind of have an idea. And again, if you're batching these out, it'll be nice because you can, some of the washes, well, you definitely want them to be completely dry before you go. So these in particular, I set up for the end of my painting session. So after I put the wash on, I knew I wasn't going to be getting back to them until the next day. So that was kind of nice. So what this step is now, after the wash is completely dry, I'm just going with a pretty heavy dry brush, or maybe you could call it an overbrush, with a bright silver. This is just the silver metallic paint from Pyrrole Red. And I didn't want to use the same airbrush paint because it's just too thin. This has a little more bite, a little more grit to it. So it's much better to dry brush with. So just kind of hitting all those raised areas. Again, since we're going to be covering the whole model, all the other parts of the model with paint, it's okay, to get it on other areas, and you can, this way you can be nice and thorough. So you kind of want to have a game plan to, go with the different layers of, okay, what can I do that's not going to interrupt or disrupt the next step. So we get our dry brush there. So now I'm just painting the cloth, and for these orcs, just kind of went off what they had on the Games Workshop website. So I'm using burnt red from Pyrrole Red. It's kind of that, maybe an equivalent would be corn red, just kind of like that dark maroon color. And sometimes I wasn't sure, okay, was that piece of cloth supposed to be red or not? So I just tried to keep it the same, with all of them. This one, he has a belt which will paint. So there is like there's this little red part on top, and then the belt. But yeah, just a little bit of cloth. You see, it's not a real delicate thing. And then I'm using mahogany for the leather belt there. I'll also use it for the handle of the little axe weapon that he has. Different sculpts have, their shield is a wooden shield, so I used the mahogany for that as well. Not a whole lot of leather straps and stuff on these models. Some of them have a belt that's visible. And then what I used was dark umber from Pyrrole Red to just to paint the dirt, the basing material there. As you'll see, we'll put a wash and some other stuff, but I just wanted to give it like a brown kind of base to go by. So now, before we do any highlights, I cover all the painted areas with just a black wash. I use Nuln Oil. You can use whatever you want. And if this, it works out because if you get some of the wash on the silver parts, it's quite okay. You may look at it and you may actually even prefer that. And then I also use the same black wash to go over the base. Now what I want to do is go back and just put a base coat of Pyrrole Red Ivory over any flesh areas. They probably got painted silver or something else, but after that wash is dried, I go back and just get this foundation down. You can use different flesh colors. We are going to go over this with a transparent paint, a Citadel contrast paint for the flesh. So this ivory to me is a better choice than a bright white, but you could use a flesh color. I don't think it'd be necessary if you use the contrast paints to go as dark as a brown, but not necessarily. While that's drying, I go and I do just the very simple highlights here. I use the bright red or bold Pyrrole Red from Pyrrole Red on this. I like Pyrrole Red paints. You don't have to, you don't have to be real precise on the thinning on them. Just moisture from the brush seems to be enough. They have great coverage. They don't dry out, So, but any red you could use on this. Just hit those highlights, and then I grabbed a little bit of that ivory and mixed it in with the mahogany to come up with a lighter shade or lighter color for the highlight on the leather and wood parts. So now for the orc flesh, I use the contrast color Aggaross Dunes, and I kind of go on fairly light. As you'll see, I'll put a couple of coats on it just to kind of get the tinting dark to the extent that I want. I also painted about half my orcs with a green tone, and I didn't. The Citadel orc flesh color is a little more, a little brighter than I like. So you could mix it with that Aggaross Dunes. That's a pretty good color, or you could just use the Militarum green, which is that kind of saturated green color. All right, so now I just got some like a gray. I think it was the dark warm gray, and maybe mixed in a little bit of black with it just to go with a overbrush. And then I added a little bit of that ivory just to lighten it up, just to get some of the edges. I'm just trying to create a little bit of tonal variation on here. on the base, just to give it a little depth, bring out some of the highlights, higher areas. And then I believe all my forces of evil I have based with the dark golden brown, just kind of differentiate them a little bit from the good, the forces of good in the Middle-earth strategy battle game. Make sure that you let that the rim base dry completely before you do this. Otherwise, you may get some of the flocking in that paint. I just take some super glue and kind of just a few little spots, and then I have just my little bucket of flock. I put it on there, and just have little patches. Here you can see a group, and you can see the different colors of flesh in there. Okay, so you got about 30 of these. You want them different. Here's the guy we painted. Hey, if you liked the video, please subscribe, like, leave a comment, and we'll get back with you with some more painting videos. Thank you.